Watch this.
100% success.
Based on attendance or based on financial support? Likely neither. But when it comes to attention given to the Hetereroesomeness Festival, oh yeah, they certainly got more than they expected. Boise police will start enforcing Idaho's new public camping ban next week, but kinda the same way they've always approached homelessness. The fight over public lands is heating up, and Boise's mayor took a seat at the national table to push back against plans to sell it off. It began as one man's answer to Pride festivals. It ended up being about, several dozen people's answer to Pride festivals. That's about how many showed up to Cecil D. Andrus Park last Friday and Saturday in Boise for the first ever Hetereroesomeness Festival. Dozens. Needless to say, the turnout was not so awesome. Although the organizer, that'd be Mark Fitzpatrick of Eagle, says that number was much higher than that. Well, having the anti-LGBTQ+ event fall flat may have been enough to get people's attention. What seemed to get a lot more attention was what was said in a podcast promoting the event. So we wanted to hear from Fitzpatrick why he believes this festival was a success and whether he agrees with the comments made during his podcast appearance from the grounds of the festival.
Overall impression of the weekend was big success. We did what we said we were going to do, which is provide a free event for people to come and celebrate traditional family values, gather together with kids. We had the kids zone set up. We had a stage set up with great music. We had some things to contend with for sure, one of which was some chilly and rainy weather on Friday that I think kept quite a few people away. And then some chilly weather on Saturday that was breezy. And then we also had the onslaught of nonstop attacks from the morally bankrupt, degenerate Pride community on anybody that mentioned that they were going to get involved with our event in the months leading up to it, which caused a lot of sponsors and people to say they weren't going to be involved or attend.
Could it be that people just didn't want to be a part of it?
No, a lot of people wanted to be a part of it.
But they weren't?
No, we had 700 people show up to the event. 700 to 1,000 over the weekend.
That's a success, though? For $85,000 that you spent?
Take a seat, please. Take a seat. We've got
Come on in, man.
Mark, the founder of the Old State Saloon, joining us.
That's the amount Fitzpatrick told the podcast Backlash he spent on the two-day event.
One thing I learned is these are expensive.
Yes.
Because even just like the police officers are $11,500
Oh.
plus security. We have security that's $7,000. Anyways, it all comes up to $85,000, and I told them we've only raised about $20,000 to $25,000.
This is not about money. If it was about money, I would have charged more than $5 for a beer. This is about doing what we said we were going to do and celebrate traditional family values during this month when a lot of the country feels like they're expected to celebrate the moral depravity of what Pride tries to do at their events.
Last time we talked to you about this a year ago, you said this wasn't about hate. But yet you had somebody there on site premises, and you spoke on the podcast, somebody who very much promotes hate. How do you respond to that?
How did he promote hate?
I don't know what people.
Well, on that same podcast, host David Riley said this about Boise.
It's a really nice place. It's
For
beautiful.
an American city,
It's top-notch
it is.
American city.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are still very good bars around, great food. There's the Basque District. Again, it's clean. There aren't any black people here.
And tons of Mormons, which
There's
is
a lot of Mormons.
chef's kiss in a city.
Yeah, you heard that. Boise is a clean city because
There aren't any black people here.
Okay.
and that's okay with you.
I would not have said it. It's not what I would do. He's his own person. So whatever you want to know what he meant by it, if it was meant to be derogatory or a joke or whatever, he has his own show with his own style, and that was all it was. He was not sitting in front of any crowd of people. Nobody heard what he was saying at the event.
Are you okay with it?
Okay with what?
With him saying that.
Okay. If I'm going to be not okay with things or apologize for things, I would have to apologize far more for all the wicked Pride people who came into our event and did wicked things.
We don't have that on video, though.
So it doesn't mean it didn't happen. I have witnesses. I do have this stuff on video. I have a man who pretended to be or maybe he is, I don't know, dishonorably putting on an army uniform, lying and deceiving people to get on stage to say that he's going to do one thing.
What's in your underpants? Elephants taking pride in tranny suicide.
And do an entirely different thing to promote transsexualism.
At church they condemned him and called him a she.
That's absolutely disgusting, wicked behavior. And you're focusing on some guy who whispered a comment into a mic, and you're saying that has something to do with me?
You invited him there.
That's totally
Did you not?
I invited everybody there.
But you know who he is? His whole persona is hate, anti-Semitism, and white nationalism.
Go talk to him about it.
I've tried, but you're saying you lie down with dogs. That proverb, right? You are who you hang out with.
No, you're not.
Okay, so why?
I'm not him. He's not me. You know me. People know me who get to know me. Mm-hmm. I'm not racist. Okay.
Okay.
All races are equal if Christ is your king.
So you denounce what he said?
I would never say what he said. I don't know what his intent was. I don't know if he has.
You don't believe what he said, though.
Here's
right?
the thing. People have free speech, okay? And if they're gonna make jokes or whatever, it could be derogatory. See, this is the thing is, like, I don't believe people should be derogatory with the intent to hurt somebody's feelings with what they say.
Is that close? Fitzpatrick kept saying he wouldn't have said what Dave Riley said, but I gave him many opportunities to denounce it, yet he wouldn't outright condemn it. He did say it was less a race thing and more a liberal thing. This is Fitzpatrick, by the way, when it comes to cities being clean or not. Just for some perspective, if it was the weather keeping people away from the festival, on Friday, it was in the mid-60s. Boise got 1/1000th of an inch of rain, barely enough to register. Saturday, it was 67, and yeah, a little bit breezy. Many summer festivals would pay for those kind of conditions. Fitzpatrick told us today, this weekend was a great start, and he learned a lot from it that he hopes to put into planning next year's festival. Yeah, he's planning another one. We did reach out to David Riley also, who, in case you didn't know, was at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia back in 2017. And it was Riley who apparently suggested they carry torches during that thing. And over the years, he has deleted a lot of anti-Semitic posts from social media. Riley told us today he stands by what he said, calling it a joke, but also, quote, diversity is a weakness, not a strength. The LGBTQIA plus movement is satanic. Straight white people are welcome and wanted in Idaho, end quote. And here's the thing. We debated a bunch about whether we even cover this story at all today or how we would even do it. Should we give it the attention? Because after all, this is what they want. And we get it. That's what we're doing. We're giving them attention. But in the end, it became about what I once learned from Dr. Charlene Taylor, who, when she was called the N-word in Boise's North End a few years ago, and nobody who heard somebody say that said anything about it to her, well, saying nothing is saying something. And saying Boise is a nice, clean American city because there are no black people here, it's wrong, first of all. But more importantly, it's racist and should not be tolerated. See, it wasn't that difficult. All right, we are exactly a week away from July 1st, the day many of the 341 laws passed during the last legislative session go into effect. One of them, Idaho's ban on public camping. The law is focused on Idaho's 3 largest cities and requires them to keep people from camping in certain public spaces. That even includes sleeping in your car. So, to be in compliance, the city of Boise modified its public camping ordinance this afternoon. But what will that look like when it comes to enforcement? Aspen Shumpert listened in on that meeting and got the answer from the city's new police chief himself.
All right, well, welcome back, everybody.
Tuesday, the city of Boise outlined how they will enforce a new law banning camping in public spaces in cities with at least 100,000 people, like Boise, Meridian, and Nampa. The law, which takes effect July 1st, leaves it up to individual cities on how they want to enforce it. For Boise, that will be done by the police department.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council.
Police Chief Chris Dennison says the new language removes requirements for officers to check shelter availability before issuing a citation.
It will remove some level of discretion from officers. We will have to take some form of action when we become aware of public camping.
New ordinance language the city passed Tuesday leaves it up to officers on how best to handle enforcing the camping ban.
There will be times that the solution is a citation and take enforcement action.
I think we're going to be looking for individuals who are potentially habitual offenders, that we've provided that education, we've done that outreach, they're either refusing the outreach or the engagement. they're continually coming back or just outright deciding they're not going to comply, they're not going to do anything and just want to stay in that space.
The citation will be $10 per violation, and the low cost is to try and avoid financial burden. But Dennison says the city will continue to support a housing first, resources first approach.
There's going to be times where it's going to be, can we move people to treatment? Can we get them into shelters, the other services that we can provide for them? So for me, it's really important that the officers have that discretion to make those decisions in the moment when they're dealing with the person on the ground.
Boise Mayor Lauren McLean and council members say they are losing flexibility under the state law, but connecting people to resources remains the priority.
Your officers will continue to do what they've always done, which is to seek solutions with a much tighter window of what can and can't be done given the law that was passed. We also know Boiseans have made clear that there's so much more than ticketing that needs to be addressed and provided, and to ensure that we continue to not have the issues that we've seen in other cities, that we do all we can to stay ahead of the issues surrounding and then to compassionately care for folks that are experiencing homelessness.
Council passed that new ordinance with the change in the language unanimously in the meeting this afternoon. Brian, I asked the police chief come July 1st, what's the plan? Are you guys going out and doing sweeps? He says no, they don't have any of that plan, but they do anticipate maybe more encounters, maybe more calls, reporting that there's public camping going on, that they're going to have to go and decide what to do.
Okay, so it doesn't really change, like you said, the enforcement, how they approach it, but
yeah,
it
priority is still the same for them.
The same for them, but it just means that anybody maybe sleeping somewhere that they notice, that's what would cause an approach, where before it would not.
Yeah, and also, you know, the chief said maybe that looks like people going to surrounding cities. Maybe Garden City is going to see a heightened increase in the unhoused population going
because there is a population limit to this law.
There is a population limit, 100,000 people. So that's Boise, Meridian, Nampa. I reached out to Meridian and Nampa today to see if they had any changes. We didn't hear back from them, so not sure if they've changed their ordinance for state law yet.
It might just then fall on the county sheriff in that area, possibly. All right, thank you very much, Aspen. Okay, so during that city council meeting this afternoon, Mayor McLean announced she was stepping away for an unexpected press conference related to public lands. That topic has been in the headlines lately as a Republican-backed plan to sell thousands of square miles of federal lands across the West. However, that part of President Trump's policy bill, that was nixed late yesterday on a technicality. Yet, the engine behind the sell-off proposal, that'd be Utah Congressman Mike Lee, says he will pursue a new way to support President Trump to move that idea forward. Okay, so Joe Paris, I imagine that development and Mayor McLean excusing herself from the council meeting, that is obviously related, right?
Yeah, we were searching where the mayor went and why they went on a pause, and we found her right in the center of a national conversation. So it's an interesting conversation across the West, different perspectives, of course, from east to west, and we'll talk about that. But yes, the mayor speaking out, I should say, about selling off public land, specifically in the Gem State. Senator Maria Cantwell from Washington State, a senior member of the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, asked Mayor McLean to join her on a congressional call-out. Senator Mike Lee from Utah says he's now looking at selling off BLM land, not Forest Service land, in only areas within 5 miles of population centers. His goal is to sell the land to states or private entities for housing and infrastructure use. Lee says that housing prices are crushing families and keeping young Americans from living where they grew up. So this is his proposed fix. Stakeholders across the West, though, are pushing back, and that includes Mayor McLean. Speaking to congressional delegates about the impact, this is not imaginary land that's far, far away.
Mayor of the city of Boise, I'm looking out of my office right now at 2 distinct areas that are put at risk with this proposal to sell off public lands. Just yesterday, a resident said, well, how can they sell them off? They're public, they belong to us. That is the question we should all be asking and that we've got to fight for. The sell-off of lands would potentially block access to about 11% of the over 200 miles of trails that we have that lead from our city into open spaces.
The mayor also submitted and got passed an emergency resolution last Thursday at the United States Conference of Mayors, and that was opposing congressional legislation that could result in the sale of hundreds of thousands of acres of Idaho public lands. And it's a bipartisan issue here in Idaho. Mayor McLean is essentially aligned with Idaho Congressman Jim Risch and Mike Crapo, Republicans. They spoke out last week about the public lands provision, specifically in the Big Beautiful Bill, both saying something to the effect of, after reviewing the reconciliation language, they do not support the proposed provision to sell off public lands. Remains to be seen if this new proposal changes their mind or what their reaction will be when Senator Lee puts that forward. But for now, a major concern, regardless, for people like Mayor McLean, things like the risk of wildfires.
Development in open spaces, in our woods, in our open spaces, and here at home in our foothills. And so the removal of lands, putting them in public lands in private hands, increases risks to our communities from wildfire, takes away the very culture and life that all of us that are communities right up against public lands rely on.
Again, it remains to be seen exactly what the specific proposal will look like. But Brian, public lands in the West is an interesting conversation. I spoke with Idaho Congressman Mike Simpson about this recently. When you have lawmakers from the East Coast or even places like Texas, places where they don't have this public land, there's a fundamental different understanding about the value of it to people here in the West. So it is interesting with this East Coast bias, so to speak, in politics, especially in D.C. It is interesting to see Republicans aligned with Democrats on this issue in the West.
Representative government, I mean, this is what it's all about, right? People out here, who's in favor of this, I guess is the next question.
Yeah.
We'll come and find out. All right, thank you very much, Joe. Immigration policies might feel like a Washington, D.C. issue. We've touched on this before because, after all, immigration is a federal matter. But the impact of those policies, well, they hit a lot closer to home. Idaho dairy farms, for example, some that have operated for generations, are now bracing for stricter enforcement, and they're wondering if their workforce and their future might be in jeopardy. Hunter Funk's here now. A federal flip-flop on immigration enforcement has dairy leaders worried about ICE raids, workforce, and just the future of their farms, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're worried about what comes next, Brian. The Idaho Dairy Association's CEO, Rick Nearbout, says things are uneasy right now, and not just in the Idaho dairies, but in the entire ag sector.
Look across the board, the number of Idaho commodities that are top 5 in the country, that's all at risk. I mean, we're tip of the spear in dairy, but it is all of our major commodities have risk in this, and that even industries that have access to the H-2A program, they still have a significant piece of their workforce that's here without status.
ICE raids are taking place across the country, and many commodity groups in the ag industry felt a sense of relief when the Trump administration told immigration officers to pause arrests at farms, restaurants, and hotels. It came after President Donald Trump expressed concerns about the impact aggressive enforcement was having on the industries. But it didn't last long. A few days later, the Assistant Secretary of Department of Homeland Security declared there will be no safe spaces and that worksite enforcement remains a cornerstone of their efforts to safeguard public safety, national security, and economic stability. Nearbout says The dairy industry continues to struggle getting people to come to work for them. And while the ICE raids aren't helping the industry in that process, an H-2A visa program would. But that also looks to be a long time coming.
Right now, you go back to DC and you talk with Republicans about trying to do something on this front, and they say, hey, we have to address the border first. That's the primary focus of the American voter, and we need to take that issue off the table before we start talking about reforming visas. So that's step one, is getting the big, beautiful bill passed and signed into law. And then we're hopeful that at that point, we have the ability to have some real robust conversations around reforming visa programs and getting year-round agriculture access to a visa for the first time in history.
The aggressive ICE raids at work sites can have a ripple effect for the workers, producers, and even for you, the consumer. Coming up at 6, we're going to break all of that down for you, of what that ripple effect really looks like.
Okay, because this recent agreement that Idaho just went into with the federal government, when it talks about criminals that they take out of the jails, that's where that focus is supposed to be.
Yes.
But as we heard, that doesn't mean everybody else is just off the table.
Yeah.
It just means that's where the focus is. And so,
Yep.
all right.
And some people are scared to go to work.
Yeah, I can understand that. All right,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Hunter.
Well, we are seeing a little bit of storming in south central Idaho this afternoon. We've got some rain all along the Idaho-Nevada border there, and some rain happening in the central mountains, but lightning and storms specifically in Twin Falls County, a little bit in Cassia County. Now, all that moisture is coming from this low pressure system that is directly over Nevada, but we are seeing some impacts as that precipitation is moving a little bit up north. We only expect those storms to continue for maybe another hour or two. Rain could then continue for a couple more hours after that, but it should should taper off overnight. Wind gusts right now haven't gotten too strong, right around 20 miles per hour in south central Idaho, but they could potentially get up to 40 miles per hour this evening. Treasure Valley, on the other hand, looking very nice, 85 degrees right now, right on par with seasonal norms for this time of year as we're in the first full week of summer. Tomorrow is going to be the warmest day of the short-term period. We're looking at 90s throughout the Treasure Valley, upper 80s in the Magic Valley. We'll then cool off for a few days to the upper 80s before getting really hot with some upper ridge high pressure building into the region, looking at 90s again next week.
All right, bear with us. We have some technical difficulties. Can't show the comments on the screen tonight, but I'm going to read them right off my phone, which is where they come anyway. This one from Patty Andrews with regard to the Hetereroesomeness Festival this weekend. Calling someone morally depraved because of who they love sounds like hate to me. This one from Bruce. Maybe Mark could use his money more wisely by promoting love instead of hate, kind of like what Jesus would do. Thank you, Brian, for sticking to the question. Fitzpatrick knew who he was having on his show. Those things should not have been said, and true Christians love thy neighbors, period. Tired of small, loud groups spewing hate, says Maggie in Twin Falls. Let's see if I get this straight. Free speech for all, unless you're a member of the LGBTQ plus community or the black community. I believe Boise sent Mr. Fitzpatrick a clear message about not showing up for his festival, says Sheila. Meanwhile, Chris says, why would you invite someone to be on the 208 and try everything to get him to answer for what another person said that you didn't like? I just wanted him to say it was wrong. Didn't say that.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.